Good afternoon, welcome to the Midday Mull for Thursday the 7th of January. An interesting day, if you watch the news, a day where America seems to have fallen apart, and Donald Trump, instead of making America great again, has aligned it with the banana republics of the world, where leaders have refused to accept election results. And so there are many dubious characters in the history of the world that he now joins. And as I was reflecting on it, thinking it really does highlight the state of humanity. We like to think that we are noble and that they are good and that human beings can get things right, whereas in actual fact, we can't. Left to ourselves, it goes pear-shaped. In McShane's readings today, reading Genesis chapter 7, which is the story of the flood, and it ends up in verse 23, every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out, people and animals and creatures that move along the ground, and the birds were wiped out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. And what it is saying is that human wickedness affects the whole world. And we see that just a day or two ago, Donald Trump signed permission for people to start drilling for oil in the Arctic. And you think, why? That's another pristine environment that's now under threat. But that's what human sinfulness does. And if we go back to chapter 6, we read there, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. And we see that. We see that in the individual who won't acknowledge that he wasn't elected. We see it in his supporters who break boundaries and use violence and intimidation. We see it in people chasing greed and their own self-interest. The inclination of the human heart is evil. And that is why we have the gospel, the good news. The other reading we have in McShane is Matthew chapter 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount. A lot of good guidance of how to live, how to treat people, how to walk through life, who to listen to. And it ends up with that well-known parable of the wise and foolish builders. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, says Jesus, is like a wise person who built their house on the rock. And when the floods came, that house stands. And so rather than listening to the inclination of our heart, rather than following what the world around us does, rather than listening to the voices of social media and even the leadership of the world, we need to be listening to Jesus. We need to be taking his words, hearing them and putting them into practice. And as we do that, our lives are built solid and strong and able to withstand the pressures that will come against us. And not only will they withstand the pressures of life, they will stand into eternity as well. And so as we live in this crazy world where things just go from one disaster to another, and people show their true colors, and we see the amount of damage that sin does, hold on to the good news that we have been saved, that we have teaching from Jesus that can guide our ways, that we have a hope for the future, and build your life on that, knowing that then it is solid and will last. So listen to Jesus, hear his words, put them into practice, and be blessed.